Hello everybody, welcome back to my humble forge. I am DeToten for Bear Steel, and today we're going to start grinding on that hunter's knife we made last episode. Get it cleaned up so we can start preparing for a handle. So as you can see, I put it in the acid overnight, so I got all that scale off, which is incredibly hard on a belt. And so now we're going to get the profile shaped in and then start grinding the surface. First things first, whenever you're using power tools, personal protective equipment, ear protection, safety goggles, gloves, respirator, or at least a dust mask, minimum. Don't play games with your health. You lose fingers and lungs that way. All right, let's get started. Well, now that we have our profile and our surfaces ground to a reasonableness, then we can start thinking about our handle and preparing for a quench. So let's go get some holes punched for pins. So on a whim, I've decided to do a slotted handle. So I'm going to use some of this Madrona that I've had curing. It's a native hardwood to the region, ridiculously hardwood. And also I've decided to use, I don't know if you can see it, some of this mosaic pin from Jantz Knife Supply, hashtag not sponsored, but maybe let them know I recommended you, and maybe I will be. So yeah, it's 1/4 inch, so I've got a 1/4 inch bit already chucked up in the drill press, and we're going to get these holes punched. First time with the new bit. And that's a thing. All right, let's fire up the forge and get it quenched and hardened. When you're heating up to do your quench, it's always a good idea to go and start tang first so you don't overheat the tip, getting the whole thing up to temperature. Isn't it always the way the camera wants to be exactly where I want to be? Beauty. I don't even bother looking. I just clamp it nice and tight so it finishes the cooling cycle straight. Saves me so many headaches. All right, so I left it in the jig for 10 minutes or so, and it's hard. So now I can polish up the surface on the bench grinder, or more accurately, a flap wheel on the bench grinder, and then throw it in the temper. 410 degrees for, I'm going to do 2 cycles of 1 hour each. So I'm going to bring it up to temp, hold it for an hour, bring it back down to natural, and then back up, hold it for an hour, and back down. As you can see, I wasn't so much trying to polish or shape it as just give myself a place where I can see the colors of the temper. We're going for a nice straw yellow, something you see fields on a beautiful summer prairie. So now into the oven it goes and off to the races. All right, well, we got an excellent temper. I'm not entirely certain if you can see that, but as you can see, we've got you can see that, an excellent hay golden yellowish orange. So that means that the temper did go quite well. And now it's just more grinding. So back to it. So now I'm going to start shaping my handle material. I'm going to begin by cutting it all flush to the right length. Then I'm going to square it off so I can actually mark out where I want to cut. So I used a 25 grit zirconia belt to give myself a single flat side on this piece so I can take it back to the bandsaw and square off the other sides easily. Now that I've got something resembling flat sides on it, I can take it back to the belt, smooth them down a little bit, and then I can lay out where my holes are going to go, where my slot's going to go, and how it's all going to come together. There. Square-ish. So I've got my brass plate and my handle piece clamped in the vise so that doesn't wiggle while I put this on here and mark out my holes. Okay. Now I know some of you are thinking, hey, you didn't check or punch or mark the center of that hole at all. I know. And that is why I grabbed this spare drill bit so that I could lock it in. And then I'm assured of my holes lining up. While I'm here, I'm going to punch the hole in this. You can see I've got it scribed to prepare for putting the guard on. So this little niftiness is called a bench pin, and it makes sawing on small things very, very much easier. Small trick, by taking off one end of the blade, I can actually be in the piece instead of having to cut my way from the outside. Rightio. Easy peasy pudding pie. And now I can clamp that in the vise and clean it up to my heart's content until that tang fits. In case you were wondering what the copper sheet is, it's a soft jaw setup, so I don't mar or ding up softer materials like wood, brass, and silver that I put in here. That's going to be a beautiful thing. All right, now we can cut this right off of here. And there we are. It just needs to be cleaned up, straightened out, and it's ready. right, now that it's basically shaped, I'm going to clean it up with a little bit of acetone and throw it in the acid for a little while, and it'll come out just gorgeous. Okay, so now I'm going to lay out for the slot that this is going to drop into, which shouldn't be that hard to do. As you can see, I've already got the bottom edge. That's where the slot's going to stop. So I just got to mark something resembling a middle line and put some square lines on either side of it. There we are. And this nifty little spiffy, I like this thing. You get it set right and it'll give you all the square lines you want. Now, getting it set right sometimes is a bit of a challenge. Okay, now that that's laid out, right then, let the chiseling begin. I start by cutting the straight line so that it doesn't just wander off on me. Note I'm making a slight rolling motion with the chisel. This does allow it to stay a little straighter and cut a little deeper. By Jove, I think that's got it. Haha! We have the pin ability. All right, now that we've pulled the guard out of the acid, it's looking very beautiful. And we can get that polished up and put a little shape on there. Drop this down a little bit so it fits on the finger. And then we can work on getting our knife assembled and then prettied up. Okay. All right, now that we got our guard properly cleaned up, I can anneal it down and shape the finger well. In the case of what they call the merry metals, copper, silver, gold, brass, aluminum, all those, the process of softening is exactly the opposite of steel. So I've got to heat it up to critical and then quench it and it'll become soft as butter. So let's heat it up. All right. And now it's going to be just as soft as butter. All right, so here we go. I'm going to just beat from the bottom side and curl out the top. You can actually see what's going on. So a little bit of grinder work and back in the acid to clean it back off, and then it's ready for polish and assemble. All right, so now we're going to do our dry fit and get everything together so that when we actually put it together, it's tight. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is get these pins cut to length so that I can do a dry fit. And now I have two pins. Clean them up on the flap wheel just a little bit, just the ends, and we'll see about our dry fit. Check to make sure they actually go through the wood. little bit snug there. For the record, I've never, ever had a pin fit the first time. They say they're 1/4 inch, but they're just slightly not. There we go. All right. That one went in. Well, real snug is good. No wiggle then. Assuming you can get it in there. Ah, haha. Or not. Okay. They're actually going in. We can take it back apart again, do our handle shaping, and then pin and glue it. Now I'm only going to do the shaping that I can't do once it's assembled. All right, so we're actually going to glue it together now. When I glue things together, I absolutely loathe just seeing straight up epoxy. So I have a fair collection of powdered pigment that I mix in with my epoxy so that it doesn't just look like epoxy. It looks more like G10 actually once it's done. Don't be shy with the epoxy. For this application, I have become surprisingly fond of the Gorilla 2-part epoxy. Not sponsored, but it does have a very nice resiliency to impact that most glues don't. It never fully hardens up. It always remains just the tiniest amount soft. So it can take an impact a lot better than, say, fiberglass epoxy, which is what I use for making mosaic pins. And let's just fill that channel right clean up. A little bit of glue on the pins. Yes, this is cheating, but it's a good way to get your pins driven in there without actually, driving them in there. Just use your vise. And set that to cure. Word of advice, don't just clamp it straight in your vise. Put a paper towel down, because that glue is going to continue to move until it's set. And we would all very much prefer it to move not on the vise. So for me, I'm going to come back in a few minutes and take a gander at this. For you, you'll have to tune into the next episode where we actually shape out and polish and finish the handle and the knife. Well, thanks for following me. Remember, like, share, subscribe, bang that bell, and send some love my way. Thank you for joining me. Bye.